imagine. I haven't seen it before.
Yeah, really active.
Or tighter.
Yeah.
I went there last weekend. Thank you. Okay, so the Quartet starts first. Is there any?
See, from what I can see here, it's going to open up with Quartet. But then everything is going to be speakers.
Song.
Right. So, and I mean, the question, much of the screen, what's happening with the screen, and does that matter so much? I would rather have a tight shot of the person speaking.
Yeah,
personally.
There's going to be a little bit of a slideshow at some point. So
right.
I'll maybe try and,
but remember that for anything that gets done with this, the slideshow being a PowerPoint on a computer can be cut in. So the camera's responsibility is to deal with live action. This camera.
Right on.
Yeah. Right on. So that way someone can just slide in. So, I mean,
that's what I'm going to go for.
That's what I would say. Not that I'm a director.
Can't wait to work more with you, Todd.
All right, I'm not sure we're going to be shooting video, but okay. I'd rather figure out something else.
Hi, how are you? Good to see you too.
So here's one other question: how tight can you get this?
Like so when people are reading or talking, that's what I was asking. Because if people are, I would really focus on focus tighter.
As long as it's not down.
Oh yeah.
That's not bad.
No, that's
good.
I would say like that.
Okay.
You want to see hands
right on.
Lips moving.
I like this shot better too than the quarter screen.
Yeah.
It's got the flowers, it's got color. Yeah, that'll be really good. Okay.
Yeah, that's what I would say. I didn't do it that way.
No, I mean a little bit. Oh, did you all? Okay, yeah. So my said. That's really nice. Okay, not only so people can not only watch the video later, but if they want to, there's live Facebook, and it's on her.
Oh my God, that is so tremendous. I love it. We're flying to the guitar. Getting it all so, yeah. Thrilled to say that it's the
Okay. Can I do that now?
Yes, yeah, that's
Okay.
fine.
Hi, good to see you too. someone else's dream. Well, like vision of reality. We're living someone else's vision. I mean, it's not, we're not part of it. Possibly. Right here. Can we put like a bag or something down there? We can put our bags right there. They're right here. Hey, there. I don't know how to do that.
I think one of the hardest things is to be bold. You know, people want to agree with each other. So I think that line between, you know, it's easy to agree. It's harder to, you know, be a little bit more out there. I think trying to build those relationships so that when you know, can be a little bit bolder with people who are your friends and allies who know you, who have respect for you. So doing that kind of work, showing up at things, showing that solidarity actually means a lot. A lot of environmental groups are just too cautious about what we ask for, what we dream about, the movements and the actions we take to get those things. If we're not going to ask for it, if we're not going to demand it, then it's just too easy for that to be, you know, where we end up. We all know what we need, you know, which is, you know, an end to fossil fuel world, and you know, if we can't say that and demand that and really push for what gets us there along the way, then if we're not demanding that, we're just never going to be able to get there. But when we can take that tough stand and really, you know, also bring along others, we need to build that movement to get others to be with us. We're not going to get that alone. So it's somewhere in there that we need to be, I think, in order to really win in the end, and for all of us. You have to be bold.
Thank you all for coming. My name is Kassie Lumumba Barrow, and it is my pleasure to be here to honor and to share in a collective revisiting of Rose's legacy. As a movement builder, a person who created infrastructure for liberation movements that critically challenge and transform the way we do our do. You know, it's a pleasure to sit and hear the stories of Rose. She was and is a teacher and a facilitator, a free bird within the cage, a beautiful and loving spirit, a person who I can honestly say is one of the most principled people I ever had the pleasure to know, let alone work with. So I'm going to turn it over to our speaker. I want to acknowledge the amazing slideshow that Cassandra and Shane put together. Sometimes pictures say so much more than the breath of Rose. But we're going to be in the tradition of Rose and not prolong. And I'm going to turn it over to our speakers in a moment, but I want to just make sure that we know that afterwards there's a reception immediately following in the lobby. Also, please take time to look at the altar and some of Rose's, ephemera from Rose's life. Also, if people are interested in making donations, you can make donations to the Rose Braz Memorial Fund at the World Equity Institute. And without further ado, I'm going to introduce Rose's brother, Joe Braz. So, thank you.
Like Rose, I'm not used to speaking in public, so bear with me if you can. As Kerry said, I'm Rose's brother. Glad to see everybody here. Rose had more good friends than anybody else I knew. As you know, Rose had a great passion for life. Rose basically fought for everything she thought was an injustice in this world. She wouldn't let anything go. A long time ago, my friends came up with a slogan they used to yell at Rose, "Hey, if you got a cause, call for Rose Braz." As you all know, Rose had a love for sports, and at some point in life, she became a big sports fan. I think it goes back to the days of Ricky Henderson, back when we were like in the early 80s. Rose would go to the games. She had a sheet she painted with a slash mark for every stolen base Ricky had that year, like 135 slashes on his sheet. And I forgot, my dad told me this when she appropriated a political sign that said Henderson on it for somebody running for some office somewhere, and took it to the A's game, and they let her in with this 4-foot-long sign that said Henderson on it to go and sit in the stands and with her big old sheet with the slash marks on it to root for Ricky. But, let's see. Rose had accomplished more in her life than probably most of us can imagine. I still hear people tell me something Rose did, and I'm amazed because I didn't know about it. Rose did not brag or talk about all her accomplishments, but she had more than most people could ever hope for. Started back in her days in Berkeley when she did the anti-apartheid movement stuff. Went on to teaching in South Africa, to critical resistance, to Center for Biological Diversity, to doing criminal defense work. And at one point, Rose was doing some criminal defense work and some civil rights work. And somewhere or another, she talked me into serving the police chief of Pittsburgh with the lawsuit. The problem was, though, I lived in Pittsburgh, so that probably wasn't a smart move. But he was very accommodating. He said, he knows it's coming, just walk in there and give it to him. He took it and he knew, I guess, so he let me out the back door. So it's really easy. But I do want to say, Rose has best friends, Kassie. You were incredible. Brent, you're a great husband. Cassandra, Erica, Paula, Cory, Shane, Sky, Joan. I know I missed a bunch of people, but Rose, Andrea, Lily for doing all this for the food. You know, Lily's not here today. I've never met Lily, but thank you, Lily, wherever you are. That's really about all I got to say, I guess. I just wanted to make sure I did want to mention Rose's dog before I forgot. I just want to know who in the audience has been bit by Charlotte. Raise your hands. That's at least a good 30 people, I think, probably more. Charlotte bit everybody. My dad did not bit Charlotte bit him until after Charlotte passed, and when Charlotte passed, my dad said, "Yes, she bit me too." Rose did have a knack for taking the needy people and the needy dogs that she saw, and she with Brent always she went to the shelter to get Frosty, and she picked out the second most needy dog there, not the neediest at least, but the second most neediest dog to adopt him. But Frosty still isn't as crazy as Charlotte was. Charlotte takes the cake. But anyway, Rose did love everybody. Rose loved her pets. Rose loved everybody here. Rose, in a great way of showing her love and affection for everybody, she basically, even the last day she was here, she was still, last thing she did, she had Brent call me to make sure Dad got home, because she was worried to make sure he got home okay. That's the last thing Rose said to us, because Rose always worried about everybody else, not herself so much. She was not selfish at all. Beyond that, it's really about all I got to say, but thank you very much for coming. I'm sure she'd appreciate it. She saw me here, and I'll turn it over to whoever's next, which would be, who's next? I guess it's Andrea?
Good afternoon. Well, I'm going to share some thoughts about Rose's early activism. But I guess, so I knew Rose from her work with the anti-apartheid movement in Berkeley in 1985, and from that time we went on to travel to Africa together and to be teachers there. But to be honest, I think that what Rose brought to her activism, even in the earliest stages, was not only her incredible love, which was so deep, but her working class consciousness. You know, Rose, I was saying last night to my friends, you know, she was so proud of her family. You know, the deep roots, she was so proud of her mother and father, and how hard they worked, and she felt like they need that folks who work that hard need to be honored. And she was so proud of her Portuguese heritage, and that she's the granddaughter of Portuguese immigrants. And so she always had a strong anti-racist and working class orientation. So that's what she brought to the anti-apartheid work in 1985. Now, what's kind of funny about Rose was at the same time, so we had the Campaign Against Apartheid was a collection of community folks and students who were trying to stop university investment in companies doing business in South Africa. We used a lot of direct action, and you can study that movement, but the tactics escalated, and direct action was the call of the day, and it was very radical and militant and all these things. And so Rose caught the tail end in 1985. There was a sit-in that lasted for about 6 weeks. And so she joined in that summertime, going into the fall. And there's this incredibly competent, college-educated, dedicated young woman, backbone. By day, she's working for Willie Brown, the Speaker of the House, and full Democrat, absolute Democrat party politics. But she was doing casework, a lot of constituent work, so she was working with folks who needed help. So that was how she made her daily bread. And at night, she'd be hanging out with the communists, socialists, anarchists, and not yet disclosed, folks who were involved in all kinds of styles of protest. And, Rose was an organizer, and that she took that super fine project completion kind of mind that she had. And she was instrumental in the picket that was put up to stop the unloading of cargo from ships coming from South Africa. So there was a big ship action in San Francisco where we stopped the longshoremen from unloading that cargo. So that the trick was to get hundreds of people to the dock at 5 o'clock in the morning. And so that was the work that Rose was engaged in. She also, she wrote for Between the Lines, the radical kind of newsletter that grew out of the Steps movement. And she also was very instrumental in organizing for the Shantytown protest, which was sort of in 1986, in the spring of '86, the divestment movement sort of peaked in this conflict of placing shanties, which were meant to symbolize the oppression and the poverty and the conditions that people, the black South Africans were living in, and to bring that right to the university administration. And it erupted into there was riots, and this pitched battle, and this whole thing. And again, Rose was diligent. She was there. She was core. She was a core organizer in that effort. But interestingly, in the summer of 1986, we won, I guess. Right? I mean, divestment happened, theoretically, divestment. The regents of the University of California voted to divest. But what was also happening at that time was the wars in Central America and the death squads in El Salvador and the U.S. involvement. And what was happening for a lot of the women in the campaign against apartheid was that we were inheriting the legacy from women who participated in groups like Women Against Imperialism. And we were influenced by these analyses. And so Rose would easily describe herself as an anti-imperialist, as wanting to smash patriarchy. And so that feminist consciousness was happening for some of us at that time. And so we, with not a total understanding of history, called ourselves the Women's Liberation Front. Which that name apparently had been used before. So we did things like, we decided to, this was also part of Rose's jiu-jitsu period. So she was learning self-defense and studying jiu-jitsu. So we organized self-defense classes for women. And we organized Take Back the Night marches. And asserted strongly the involvement of militarism, of how militarism was affecting us as women, and how imperialism abroad. And so we chose the ROTC Center on campus, the ROTC, the Officer Training Building, and we had a 24-hour protest. And we were very ambitious. And it was at this, to be honest, I think that it was when we started to organize these kinds of actions that Rose went from being a really powerful supporter, like a really dependable comrade, to beginning to realize her own vision. And to beginning to feel empowered to, we decided we were going to shut down ROTC. We decided we were going to take back the night. So I guess I think that also sort of colored her politics for years to come, that empowerment, and I can also say that I think that even traveling in Africa and being a teacher and having all those experiences that she could bring to her own activism, I think that empowerment was really important in terms of her coming back to America and beginning to lead and beginning to project her vision of how she wanted the struggle to proceed. I can also say that maybe not a lot of people know about her art period. So at that time in the 80s, we were just so in our 20s. And so we felt like it was sort of our obligation to do some street art. We felt like it was, you know, if everybody else was going to go out wheat pasting or doing graffiti or this kind of stuff, that we should also do some art. And you know, there was this billboard. It was a terrible billboard. It was for eggs. But what it had was a woman's torso in a yellow one-piece bathing suit. No head, no legs, just the torso with an egg in the small of the woman's back. And the slogan was, everything goes better with eggs. Is that offensive? Absolutely. So Rose and I decided that we were going to do something about it. We didn't really bother. We didn't get a whole lot of education about how to do that, but we decided paint balloons were going to be our instrument. So she had some orange paint and I had some balloons. So we managed to fill a few of these balloons with orange paint, and Rose was going to drive the getaway car, and we were going to go around and deface these billboards. So we go to the first billboard, and you know, I played softball, so I was chosen to throw the balloons. And we stopped at the first one, and I threw that thing, and it barely did anything. It was amazing how little coverage you get with the paint. But these billboards were all over the place, so we drove over to one. We went down to San Pablo Avenue, and we were going to get that one. But in the meantime, we found there was a woman whose car had died, and her son, her kids were there too. So we actually got quite involved in helping them, and we got totally sidetracked from our mission. And hours went by. So we were driving back, you know, it was kind of 1 o'clock in the morning, like, let's forget it, let's just go back. We're coming up University Avenue, son of a gun, there wasn't one more of those billboards there. So Rose pulls over, she goes, go ahead, get that one. She had great confidence in my throwing skills, apparently unfounded, it turns out. So I pulled back and I threw to get that billboard on top of the building, and I almost got it. Funny thing, on the top floor, there was a window that was open. And to this day, I think, what is it like to walk out in the morning and see your house kind of splattered with orange paint? You think, why me? But I tell you that Rose was, you know, Cory will come up next and share some of what it was like to live with Rose and to travel with her in Africa. And, you know, she studied for the bar exam in Zimbabwe and got ready to, you know, after our 2 years. But I guess what I wanted to say is this, that, you know, as sad as it is to lose a friend, you know, it's sadder still to lose such a powerful part of our movement at such a needy time. And she was a freedom fighter whose style of fighting united us. It united us across so many issues and communities. So I guess I just, you know, I just want to say that I hope that the example of her life can move us to do exactly what she, I think, wanted with this gathering today, which is to move us to ever greater acts of love and resistance. Rose, rest in power.
Hi, I'm Cory, and I've been asked to speak about Rose and the Africa years. So how perfect that I should follow my dear friend Andrea. So here's some background. In 1987, I met Paula while on holiday in San Francisco, fell in love, quit my job, gave everything away, and followed her to Zimbabwe, where she was starting a new volunteer job. But little did I know that a chance leap in the direction of new love would lead to a beautiful son, a 30-year marriage, and the gift of a deep, lifelong friendship with a scrappy bunch of fellow travelers, Andrea, Jenny, and the incomparable, irreplaceable Rose Braz. As for Rose, before Zimbabwe, she needed to check a few things off her to-do list. Campaign against apartheid, check. Block South African cargo ship from entering the bay, check. Help build and occupy a shanty town on campus, check. No surprise then that she was ready for a break from the movement. So she and Andrea set off to travel across Africa. Rose was, spoiler alert, a frugal traveler, hitchhiking when possible and accepting the hospitality of strangers when offered. An adventurous strategy that led to sharing a bathroom with a wildebeest. Seriously. And moving in for 3 days with an Indian family that was determined to adopt her. And as she traveled, she listened to rural Kenyans, Rwandan refugees, Ugandan survivors of massacres. She was deeply affected by the people and the struggles she saw everywhere. So she winked at that whole thing about taking a break from the movement, and with letters of introduction in hand, presented herself to the ANC and PAC as a comrade. At their encouragement, she and Andrea went to South Africa and met with organizations on the front line. As they traveled, they documented conflicts and connected with fellow activists. And whether by staying at the home of a banished lawyer, or sharing seditious literature, or challenging the white South Africans she met, Rose took every opportunity to violate unjust apartheid laws. Rose was resolutely intolerant of racism. Next stop, Zimbabwe, 1987. Less than 10 years after hard-won independence, a time when promises made during the struggle were still being realized, and people were gaining access to education and health care, many for the first time. There was an era of hope. It makes sense then that she, along with Jenny, Andrea, and myself, would work at Dahniko Project in Harare. Dahniko was a secondary school and vocational training center for disabled war victims and refugees. We were an eclectic bunch at Dahniko, students and staff alike, living side by side, sharing endless pots of tea and bowls of salsa. We were a community that shared love stories and grief stories. We laughed and cried together. And Rose? Rose worked tirelessly to teach her students to read and write. She oversaw the creation of the school library and the publication of the school's first magazine. But she was so much more. She was a beautiful, grounding spirit on campus with an easy, relaxed way about her that attracted us all. She was a great listener. She had a terrific laugh and connected equally with everyone without attention to status. Everyone wanted her attention, and she gave it. She received endless letters of love, endless letters and notes from her students, offering thanks, professing their love, of course, or their agony, seeking her sage advice. Off campus, Rose and our scrappy tribe traveled around the country on the backs of lorries, holding on for dear life as we inhaled dust and gas fumes and chicken feathers. We were alive. And in Harare, we would often take in a serious film. Those rumors about Rose having watched Dirty Dancing 20 times? True. Once back home in the U.S., our friendship continued. We met her mother, Rosalie, and celebrated the release of her book about Rose, In and Out of Africa. We met her father, Ray, who we have loved dearly for 3 decades. And Rose was there for every milestone in our life. We followed and encouraged each other's work. She officiated at 2 of our 3 weddings, celebrated our son's birth, and we delighted as well in celebrating her deep and beautiful love for Brent. She was a true friend who held us when Paula and I experienced unthinkable loss, and then allowed us to hold her as she followed. She was wicked smart, kind, funny, and most of all, Rose was brave. Not just the hitchhiking in Matabele land in the height of the Troubles kind of brave, though she was that, but the behind-the-scenes organizer steering the ship, but never expecting credit kind of brave. The step up and out of her comfort zone when it mattered kind of brave. And when she was front and center, she held that position with the care it called for. Rose was the rarest of people, an ego-free leader. When called to lead, she did so with authenticity and modesty. And man, oh man, was she powerful. We had the gift of sitting with Rose in her final days, as did many people here, and we experienced again that concern and kindness focused more on her friends, on Ray, Joe, Kristin, Frosty, and always, always deeply on Brent, than herself. She was kind and brave and loving to the end. And there is a big rose-shaped hole in our hearts. Heavy with grief, but also full of love and binding us together. And we're all part of her scrappy tribe now. Love you.
Sarah Krakoff, and I met Rose in 1989. It was her first year of law school, so we're following roughly in order of Rose's life, although we're all kind of going back and forth. Because of course once you know Rose, you don't let her go. It's a good thing that Berkeley was so stodgy and conservative when we were in law school. Or we might never have met. I was a year ahead of Rose, and it's kind of a big place. And then I would have missed out on a friendship with one of the best humans on the planet. I don't remember the exact moment of our first encounter, and I sort of regret that. On the other hand, I do think once you know Rose, you feel like you've known her forever. So I think it's no accident. I don't remember the exact moment. But in all likelihood, it was at a meeting for the Coalition for Diversified Faculty, or it could have been one of the other 6 or 10 other activist groups we were both involved in, but I think it was probably CDF. Rose went to law school to continue her life's work that you've already heard some about, of making the world a more just, humane, and beautiful place. So of course she didn't let up on that as a student at all, and Rose just took on whatever the important battle was in front of her. Her talents as a political organizer were abundant. She was braver, calmer, and stronger than most, and she was also more organized than most. Watching Rose not only be on the front lines, but also keep track of lists and names, and being on top of things like stuffing mailboxes. For those of you too young to know what a mailbox is, it's a physical thing you had to stuff with flyers and so forth back in the day. But it really made me understand, I guess sort of strangely for the first time, why the term is in fact organizer and not something else. That part of Rose's personality also made her everyone's go-to person for help with school. She had the best class notes and kept up with all the reading. I mean, and this is amazing, really, given everything else that we were doing. It's kind of like her dual life as Willie Brown's, chief of outreach and then activist and organizer by night. She really was an amazing student in addition to everything else. So sort of the Catholic schoolgirl in her, I think, wouldn't let up. So fierce activist in between being the top-notch law student. And so back to that activism, I think I'll just share one story because Rose loved this story so much. In addition to organizing annual student strikes for the Coalition for Diversified Faculty and sitting in the dean's office on a regular basis and just making ourselves generally an annoyance and irritation to the school, which was our mission. The background is that at the time, and there were much bigger things you already heard about than that Rose worked on her whole life, but as an activist and a person who cares about justice, you do what you need to do where you are. And at the time, Bolt's faculty was amazingly, Bolt is the old name for Berkeley Law School, was amazingly undiverse. Like I said, conservative and stodgy. There were 2 tenured women and two tenured white women and 1 tenured person of color and African American man on the Berkeley Law faculty at the time. This is the late 80s. So we monitored faculty hiring and were in constant, let's just call it, conversation with the dean's office. We had been told that there were no faculty positions one fall semester, and therefore there would be no hiring going on. And then we found out that offers had been made to 2 white people, a white couple, and so we felt like this wasn't fair and we'd been left out of the loop. And so we decided to send this couple a letter telling them about the ongoing struggles at Berkeley Law over diversity, and asking them, in solidarity to consider not coming. And it was a very polite, tactful letter. I know I still have it somewhere. Rose and I were not the only ones to sign it, but in the interest of protecting people, I won't name all the names. We had a lot of friends working with us on this. We just thought this was, of course, the right thing to do, and Rose always knew what that was, right? She always knew what the right thing to do was. So we sent them this letter. As we soon learned, this would be considered fairly outrageous by the administration, our professors, on whom we relied for grades, letters of recommendation, and so forth. And I just remember sitting across from Rose at Cafe Strada, across from the law school there. I think it was still called Cafe Roma back then. And just watching Rose calmly sign this letter. I mean, she didn't even think of, it's not that she didn't think about it. She thought about everything. But she didn't consider, for 1 second, the adverse possible consequences to all of us. And I really do think that's how she did all of her good work. She really had the most accurate moral compass of anyone I had ever met, and I think I will ever meet. So we signed the letter, sent it off, and I think it was during winter break. And when we came back, the school was in a total uproar. A fellow student who shockingly didn't agree with our cause had stuffed every single student mailbox with a letter calling for punitive action towards us and naming us all by name. Many of our professors were affronted and angry, and it was a very dramatic time. But Rose was never flustered or nervous. When she knew the importance of a cause, she just didn't worry about the personal cost to her. She always saw clearly that the bigger picture mattered more than our fragile egos or momentary concerns. And in fact, this story about the mailboxes and the letters and the outrage became something we told and just laughed about again and again over the years. And I'm sure you all have your own stories like this with Rose, like driving around throwing the paint at the billboards. So that's just one of many stories I know and I'm sure all of us could tell. There are too many like that to share here, and Rose, in her own words, according to Cassandra, didn't want us going on and on. And I could just picture her saying that. But I do have to tell you just the brief summary of her other work during law school, and this is, remember, just three short years. She worked with the National Lawyers Guild and defended political protesters while in law school. She spent a semester in Geneva working on international human rights, and there she did a report on human rights abuses in jails in Burma, and I remember getting a letter from her. Letters, do I have to go over that one for the young people? On that flimsy, long-distance airmail stationery, telling me this helpful advice: Sarah, don't ever get thrown in jail in Burma. I thought I'd pay a check. And then after law school, she went to work for criminal defense practice, where she did a range of work, including continuing to defend political protesters and some civil rights litigation. I didn't know that Joe helped out serve one of those lawsuits. It was nice of her to include you in her life's work, Joe. And then she went on, of course, to transition to working with critical resistance, and Ruthie's going to talk more about that. And you all know that was just Rose, of course, always at the forefront of movements that people later figure out about and latch on to. Oh, putting lots of humans in prisons is bad. Like, Rose knew that before many politicians and so forth. To know Rose as a friend is to always seek out her warm, steady, and comfortable personality. I think part of her genius as an activist was that everyone just felt better around Rose, which made being close to a fiery and courageous protester unusually calming. So Rose and I stayed in as close touch as we could over the years since law school. Rose was also very good at that, tending friendships. She came to my wedding, I went to hers. She visited after my daughter Lucy was born, and you know from the photos she did a lot of that. I think as Brent said one time we were watching photos of her, there were a lot of pictures of Rose and babies. She visited and held all your babies. I tacked on days in Oakland or San Francisco whenever travel allowed. And we did a lot of just the ordinary fun things Rose loved. We ate Zachary's pizza and went afterwards to Double Rainbow ice cream. I'm still mad at them for closing on Rose's behalf. We walked her quirky rescue dogs, Charlotte and then Frosty. We went hiking in Point Reyes, and we always reminisced and laughed. As for many of us here, Rose was my hero. She really was. She was my hero. I remember during a moment of wondering what the hell I was doing in my life, I just said to myself, I'm just going to try to be a little bit more like Rose every day. This was several years ago now. It's still my mantra. But she was also just my friend. She was the best person I knew, but completely relatable. That was part of her magic. She was brave, fearless, kind, warm, regular, and funny, and beautiful in the deep inside-out sense. Like many of us, I'm still very confused and angry about losing Rose, and that she had to suffer. I'm really pissed about that. It makes the world seem a bit cruel and mean. But on the other hand, and I think Rose would want us to understand this, that it was a beautiful world that had Rose in it at all. And how lucky we were, how lucky I know that I was, that I got to meet her. A world that produced a Rose Braz has something right. I will always miss Rose, but I will never forget her. And I will always be grateful that life tossed me her way. And I will try every day, always, to be a little bit more like Rose. And finally, I want to send my love and gratitude to Rose's family, her dad, Ray, her brother, Joe, and her outstanding and supportive and loving husband, Brent. Thanks for taking care of Rose and loving her the way she deserved. And thanks to all of you for letting me share my thoughts with Rose. Let the next person, Ruthie, come up.
Good afternoon. So Rose Braz, I should tell you who I am. I'm Ruthie Gilmore. And I came rather late into Rose's life. We were friends for 20 years. We met in the late fall of 1997 as part of the organizing collective for critical resistance, the conference that happened in 1998. And when I arrived at my first meeting, the collective had already been meeting for a little bit. She was the one, before all others, who welcomed me to the group, who sat with me, who explained what was going on, who laughed with me. And we almost immediately started sharing ice cream, as Sarah mentioned, and we did that throughout our beautiful friendship. But where I was going to start is that Rose Braz was the best organizer I ever knew, I could ever have known. A few years ago, after decades of increases, the decline in the number of people in prison and jail in the United States of America was big news. California's key role in the story rarely made headlines. And when California's big policy shift, realignment, got attention, few bothered to ask what lay beneath, rather than above, the surface of such dramatic change. Fewer still than ever reckoned the broadening and deepening grassroots power of abolition, whose primary organizational force was Rose Braz. During the past 2 decades, general understanding of abolition has gone from a utopian notion whose proponents were memorably ridiculed by a journalist who called Rose and her co-organizers Bolshevik bimbos. Remember that? From that to an urgent goal invoked by mainstream media and policy wonks. Critical resistance brought abolition into contemporary political consciousness, and Rose did more than anybody to shape prison abolition into an imaginative and expansive movement with its feet on the ground, always, always, always moving in practical ways. Rose rose to the connected challenges to make abolition a practical guide to political organizing. She was a champ at finding intermediate goals that would leave the system smaller, weaker, more vulnerable. She figured out how to work with groups that were not, or not yet, abolitionist, at a time when the not quite yet movement seemed pie in the sky idealism to many. She strove to achieve concrete victories to attract more people and resources to the fight. And she insisted that campaigns improve the lives of people in prison, of recently released people, and those at risk of going in order to demonstrate that abolition was not only about some future heaven. In short, Rose devoted her energy and ingenuity and breathtaking network of friends and comrades to develop specific non-reformist, or what Avery Gordon calls abolitionist, reforms. The September 1998 Critical Resistance Conference launched awareness of how many were already in the struggle as 3,500 people gathered for 3 days across the bay. Rose was one of the few dozen organizers, as I mentioned, who brought that conference into being, and her force and her imagination kept what we had produced for those 3 days going. The organizers' mantra, all of us shared this, was, "This is a campaign, not a conference." Remember that? A campaign, not a conference. Several weeks after the event was over, we met around a vast table at now defunct Heller Ehrman Law offices to specify what that campaign that we kept invoking should be. And while many of us had concerns that we held dear, youth, for example, or political prisoners, women, queer and gender nonconforming people, elders, there was very little clarity on what a campaign would or should look like. We met again and persuaded Rose to be Critical Resistance first part-time staffer with the title Campaign Director, and so it began. When in 1999, Gray Davis, then governor of California, announced plans to build another mega prison in the United Farm Workers' historic home of Delano, Critical Resistance and the Prison Moratorium Project began a 6-year campaign to stop that prison. Though it was built, the effort that Rose made with her comrades made it concretely interrupted California's 2-decade-long prison building spree. So up until this time, California had opened a prison a year for 23 years. In that time, she and the people and organizations she gathered and inspired and cajoled into coordinated motion defined through specific projects what abolition actually is as an ongoing life and world-changing practical politics. And I keep saying practical because I mean it. One of the amazing things about this woman was her unerring practicality combined with a vision that saw no possibility of admitting defeat. So some of the projects that got going as a result of this campaign to stop the Delano II prison included Education, Not Incarceration, an outreach project to teachers, K-12 teachers, that produced, among other things, a massive visit to the state legislature in Sacramento of children from all over California to plead on their own behalf for resources for schools and not for prisons, as well as a template for the National Education Association to use to spread the thinking, education, non-incarceration, throughout, by way of the union, throughout the United States. It also, picking up on the education theme, meant that Rose developed her relationship, her long-standing deep relationship with people, including Andy Shaw-Caron, who I know is here this afternoon, who was then active in the SEIU and also a teacher inside prison, to make common cause with the SEIU. And after years and years of working on developing this relationship, we eventually did, in fact, achieve a meeting that turned into more movement building with the SEIU, and the way we talked about it was that in having that meeting that Rose was so central in making happen, we went from being 6 people to 500,006 people fighting against the prisons in California. Rose did an enormous amount of the kind of nuts and boltsy budget work in which we would roll over to Sacramento and talk to legislative staffers and talk to oh gosh, I can't think of the name of it, legislative analyst's office, to talk about ways to take the resources, and our goal was, of course, to take the resources and the captive people from the prison system and put that to the work of making people's lives better, whether education, health, welfare. We didn't want to save money. We wanted to spend it differently. We never wanted to save money. And also, Rose with her amazing imagination and her relationship with so many people doing so many different kinds of movement work in every area of the struggle for social justice, developed insights that turned into part of the campaign against the Lento II prison that focused on environmentalism and biological diversity and also environmental justice. So we had those two things going on as well. So we were working with grassroots organizations, environmental justice organizations, throughout the California Central Valley, as well as the Center for Biological Diversity and other organizations that were striving, for example, to save the lonely Tipton kangaroo rat. This was the scope of our work. Rose's legacy includes most forcefully an approach to organizing that shrinks the prison system and shrinks the other systems that shorten the lives of the kinds of people who were the people who produced Rose Braz in the first place, her family and loved ones. That shrinks the system by growing our capacity through education, organized labor, and environmental activism and environmental justice to make the world we want and need. Rose changed the world because no matter what the challenge, whether fighting against a CCPOA lobbyist or playing a game of charades, she hated to lose. She worked and she played joyfully to win. Rose Braz showed us how to be and how to do, combining and showing us how to combine restless curiosity, individual modesty, and enormous collective ambition, plus a flair for funk aerobics. Rose Braz, presenting. And now Kassie's going to come up.
I'm Kassie Siegel. I'm going to talk about Rose's work at the Center for Biological Diversity. Rose joined the center in 2009, and she brought all of her skill and talent to fighting the climate crisis. She took the climate world by storm, and she made our program what it is today. With no organizing staff at that time but her army of volunteers and interns, she quickly transformed the climate organizing landscape. She founded Climate Reality Check, which is now the largest network working to strengthen grassroots organizing on climate, with 1,600 members representing millions of people. She co-founded Americans Against Fracking and Californians Against Fracking, the statewide coalition of more than 200 organizations working to ban fracking and dangerous drilling in California. She worked constantly to build ties between those working on climate, on environmental and social justice, on human liberation, on labor, and on faith. Rose made things that are hard for most of us look so easy. She was an incredible mentor, facilitator, strategist. She brought her incredible sense of humor and playfulness to even the most difficult situations. When Rose got sick, I was so awed that there was absolutely nothing that she wanted to change. She was presented for real with the question many of us ponder in real life. What would you do if the doctor told you you had about a year left to live? Rose was already living so well, she had no regrets and nothing to change. Her work was activism, and activism was inseparable from who she was. And even with the terrible suffering that she endured during her illness, her determination to keep working was fierce. During the time she battled brain cancer, she continued to lead and to inspire us all. In 2015, with substantial neurological deficits, she conceived and assembled from Oakland the most impactful work at the Paris Climate Talks. She organized 2 panels with luminaries from around the world promoting the international movement to ban fracking and keep fossil fuels in the ground, and the only raucous protest to take place outside the conference venue in Paris, completely surrounded by the French military and police. Rose had help from a lot of wonderful people in this work, but she was its driving force, even as the doctors told her that she had very little time left to live. Rose played a huge role in supporting fracking bans that have now passed in 6 California counties. And last November, the most recent and significant of those bans went to the voters in Monterey County, which, by the way, it might surprise you to hear, is the state's 4th largest oil-producing county, with oil dirtier than what comes from the Alberta tar sands. At this time, she was suffering an enormous burden of symptoms. She couldn't really read or write, she couldn't see much on the right side, and she was losing a lot of short-term memory function. Most of the time, riding in any kind of moving vehicle was torture because it made her so dizzy and so nauseous. But Rose wanted to do everything she could still do to help pass the fracking ban. So we went down to Monterey County, and as a team we walked precincts, and I took the clipboard and the pen, and she took the pamphlets, and we went door to door. And the physical challenge of that task at that time was enormous. It was a struggle to take the flyer and hang it on the doorknob. But even then, her ability to connect with people, to laugh with them, and to change their minds was amazing. She had this beautiful exchange with one young mother who mentioned that her daughter's name was Rose. And when we left that house, our Rose had secured yet another vote. And on election night, we were back at the hotel after celebrating the passage of the fracking ban and watching the horror of the federal election. And it was 2 o'clock in the morning, and I was struggling to write an email to our coworkers that might say something helpful at this terrible time. And I read her what I had written, and just as she had so many times before, she told me exactly what it needed to be complete and to be right. She was horribly ill for several days after that trip from the extraordinary exertion that it took, but she still knew exactly what to say and do at one of life's hardest moments. The only person that I've ever known who has strength and stoicism just exactly like Rose is her father, Ray. And I can never thank you enough, Raymond Braz, for giving us the great gift of Rose. As her disease progressed towards her death, she continued to send messages of love and hope to all of her comrades. And at the very end, she said she didn't want anybody to be sad when she was gone, but she wanted us all to keep fighting to win. Rose told us to be bold. She told us not to be too cautious about what we ask for or about what we dream about. She said it's easy to agree and we want to agree, but it's harder to be a little more out there. She said you need to build those relationships. You have to respect others' events. You have to sign those sign-on letters, show up and show solidarity. You need to be there for your allies, and then when it's time to be bold, you can do it, and people will know you and respect you. Rose had an unlimited capacity for love. She brought people together like no one else I've ever known. Like all of you, I loved Rose so very much, and I'm so sorry that we've lost her from the physical world. but I carry her with me in my heart now, and I feel her presence every day as we all carry on the many projects that she launched. What I want most right now is to work with each and every single one of you with every day that we have left to make the world as Rose dreamed it. And as Rose always said in conclusion, and it was never a cliche, thank you so much for coming, and thank you for everything that you do.
I'm Brent Plater. Nothing really makes sense to me anymore, so I can't be sure what I'm about to say to you is true. But I believe it with all my heart. I feel it deep in my bones. And I'm here to tell you that I'm the luckiest man that you will ever find. Because Rose Braz, the greatest, most beloved person you will ever meet. She chose me and she married me up. I still can't believe it. It truly was a miracle. Because at the time that I started dating Rose, I was literally living in a closet at the office. It was no bigger than a full-size mattress. And despite this, she took me into her life. She showed me this extraordinary love. She introduced me to all of you, and I know, because you were all good friends of Rose, you were telling her at the time, are you sure you know what you're doing? Who is this young punk that lives in the closet? Are you sure there isn't somebody else out there for you? I would have said the same thing. But it was always easy to love Rose. She made it seem like it was easy to love me. And I know whatever relationship you had with Rose, you felt that too. Whether you were a friend or colleague, she made it seem easy and beautiful and lovely to be in her presence. Again, I really don't know if this is true, but it felt to me that the love I had with Rose could not have been greater. That I felt it in every fiber, and I believe she felt that way towards me too. And of the many things I know Rose would want you all to carry with her, carry with you from her legacy, that she would want you to find that love as well, to feel what we felt, to another person, to a community, to a cause, to a movement, and use that to inspire you to make the world that we all desire. Things weren't always simple. Rose and I argued quite a bit about how to raise the dog, for example. Slightly different theories on that. But even when we had disappointments in how the dogs were growing up, Rose had this incredible capacity in all she did, like the athletes she admired, to put the disappointments behind her and focus with certainty that that next shot would go in. No doubt. No matter how hard prison industrial complex was to fight, no doubt that it would be stopped, no matter how difficult the oil industry and the money behind it were going to be to stop fracking. Just no doubt that she would find a way to work with you all to make the world more beautiful. And I want to focus on beauty just a little bit, because we all know Rose was gorgeous from the inside out, the greatest we ever saw. But man, she was also so fine. She was absolutely gorgeous. And like most things, she worked for it. She worked hard for it. Hanging out with friends like Randall, doing the funk aerobics day after day. She built that beauty, like she built the beauty that we all share by being friends with Rose. It's hard when you see so much injustice in the world and it seems like it's getting worse, to maintain an attitude that allows you to love life and love each other. Because the injustice just overwhelms you. You just want to react in some way. I know I always do. But Rose always found a way to enjoy doing random things, whether it was playing cards or celebrity, or dance classes, or traveling the world. She would always find a way to build that into her life. Make all of you part of that as well. And give us that smile, that incredible smile, that infectious laugh that made you want to be around her. Just being with her in a room, just watching the way she would eat food, the way she would look at her hand while she was talking sometimes, the way she would walk, everything about it just made me want to be more like Rose. I'm very grateful that she chose me. That she allowed me to take care of her from the moment that she had this seizure while I was holding her hand in the emergency room until she died in my arms. Every day was a blessing to be around her. My only regret is that I just couldn't find one more thing. One more thing. I always wanted N+1 to try and make her feel better and be here as long as possible. I don't know for sure where Rose is now, so I can't say that what I'm about to tell you is true. But I do believe that she is now not only going to be a part of us, but of everything. The grasses, the flowers, the trees. When you're outside, the animals you see, the birds overhead. There will be a little bit of Rose in all of those things. Her life, her death, in every one of our breaths. And as hard as it is for me to say this, because truly I don't know for sure if I can focus on this miraculous thing we had for 15 years, or if I'm going to choose instead to just feel the loss every day as deeply as I can. I do believe that her life and her death will bloom everywhere you look if you let it. If you let her be part of the things you do. And remember how Rose would have approached that problem and try to gain some insight from the way she lived her life. If we do that, she will be there in the bloom of every flower, in every fist you raise, in every fight you engage in. So that's what I'm going to try to do. I'm going to try to remember all of the things that Rose taught me, and she taught me an incredible amount of things, because I was nobody, a punk kid that knew nothing at all, and she introduced me to so many incredible people, like the speakers who came here today, who I could learn from. She taught me about how to organize, which I'm still learning, about the political spectrum, which I'm still learning. And she taught me to be a better person. And I hope that I can continue along that path every single day. Thank you very much for coming and celebrating Rose's life with the song.
Kristin Plater. Do you have the monitor for me? Thanks. I wrote this song for Rose and Brent. I always thought of it as a fight song.
Follow the go-getters, and I know a few.
all so much for coming. Thank you all so much for continuing to support and love my brother, Brent. And please join us in the lobby where there's going to be some snacks and refreshments. Thank you very much.